As this is my first time presenting a formal talk here at Unity Grand Valley, I have to admit I was a little nervous. Most of you don't know that much about me unless we've had a chance to talk, or maybe you went online and looked me up on the website, or perhaps listened to one of my old sermons on a YouTube video. Today's a new experience for all of us. It takes courage to try new experiences. And I know it does for me. Does it for you? To step out beyond, Judy mentioned a little bit, step out beyond that green grass edge of comfort and familiarity. The fact that you are here demonstrates that you're willing to try something new. You came. To be open to change in some way. It takes resolve to recognize an idea, nurture it, develop it, fine-tune it, and grow it into whatever vision you hold in your heart and your mind about it. It's a process and a journey of unexpected challenges, unlimited possibilities, and sometimes phenomenal rewards. If you believe, as I do, that what you focus on grows, then we must focus on what we choose to create next, and next, and next. Hindsight might be 20/20, but setting intentions, living in the now moment, and watching spirit respond with yes after yes in your life provides experiences that are so much more exciting and fulfilling and consciousness expanding. And it takes practice and focus and trust every day to keep moving forward. Like many of you, I can connect the dots of my life as I look back on my experiences. They're very clear, looking backward, and that's what inspired today's topic title. I can see clearly now. But life is meant to be lived moving forward. We're at the beginning of a new year, a time when we can plant new ideas and intentions, and we can let go of some of what doesn't serve us anymore. And perhaps some of those unwanted things will surface today, as I talk a little bit about my recent story and some other ideas that have come forward. Jot them down in your memory. Jot them down on paper. Consider them later, perhaps. Now, I've condensed the intention-setting process to 4 steps in an effort to try to make it easier to remember. The first one is remember. Release, reinforce, and re-engage. So you remember, you contemplate, and you reframe your story, whatever it might be. Long story, short story, a few minutes ago, historical, what doesn't matter. Release what no longer serves you. We always have something that we can let go of. Reinforce the beliefs that are still true for you. Explore them. Do you say something? I remember one time I made some kind of flippant remark to someone at some point, and the next question out of my brain was, where did that come from? Why do I say that particular phrase? And I could trace it back to childhood and family. And then re-engage with life at a deeper and more expanded level. Put your intentions into action. Take steps towards your dreams and your goals. So remember, release, reinforce, and re-engage. And we'll talk about that this morning. Also, as part of our service this morning, we're going to take just a few minutes from now, we're going to participate, those of you who are willing, and I'm assuming everyone will, a ceremony called the White Stone Ceremony. It's offered by many New Thought churches in January, particularly, for setting intentions for the year. In part, it is a way to symbolically recognize and release ideas or habits, life patterns, maybe even relationships, anything that's holding you back from expressing your greater God self, your divine self, your authentic you. And secondly, it's a way to gain focus on what's important, to set personal intentions for the coming year, the coming week. You know, it doesn't have to be gigantuan life-type changing intentions that you want to think about today, but it can. Nothing's off the table here. You're being pulled by Spirit into something new and different. Pay attention to that. The first step as I mentioned, is to remember what those habits and beliefs are that you most often utilize as you create your life from day to day, because you are creating your life, co-creating. For example, perhaps judgment of others or yourself comes to mind for you. Maybe it's an old resentment that keeps your heart a prisoner from living in a meaningful relationship, from moving forward. Or do you suffer from the need to control others to the point of suffocation? Or situations? Doesn't have to be people. Are you plagued with perfectionism, like I have been? That not only impacts those around you in a negative way, but of perfectionism that is affecting your life in a sad and limited way. Is it waiting for you, or are you waiting for the right time to do something, till that perfect moment before you move forward? Is it holding you back? Is it stopping you from growing? In her 2012 book, Daring Greatly, Brené Brown defines perfectionism this way: teaching others, as in our children and friends, to value what other people think over what we, ourselves or children, think or how we feel about ourselves. It's teaching our children and reinforcing it in ourselves to perform, please, and prove. Perfectionism is a part of the shame cycle. Sadly, I have a lot of experience in this area. I was once a huge people pleaser. Very good at it, too. As well as being a former control freak. Ask some of my former congregants. And I get to let these things go over and over again, at least whenever I'm quick enough and remember that that issue is showing up again in my life. And I get to remember the lessons from them. I'm much better at releasing those character defects than I used to be, especially when I think I'm going too far. And I want to mention here that perfectionism, the human ego-based type of control that is never good enough and can never really be achieved, is vastly different from the spiritual perfection that we often talk about in New Thought circles. Perfectionism and control are just a couple of things that you can release. The possibilities are endless if you start exploring. What do you want to let go of? So you can be your more authentic, God-expressing, highest self, you. As things start to surface, stuff that you can start letting go of, ask yourself, what would I replace it with? Spirit loves a void. There's an emptiness to fill. What would you want to replace it with? What would you like to call in for yourself to set the intention for? Let's say you want to let go of resentment and replace it with trust or acceptance of whatever the situation is in that moment. Allowing the moment to be what it is in that moment, without judgment, without control. Just an idea. Make note of these things as it comes up for you. The last 3.5 years have included incredible changes in my life. For one, we've moved homes 3 times. After visiting friends in Pagosa in May of 2015, we went back to Castle Rock, where we had been living for 20, 30 years, with clear instructions, and I put that in brackets, that it was time for us to move. Have you ever seen the movie The Matrix? Anybody? Yeah. We just watched it again a couple nights ago. And you know how they could hook up to their programming system and download anything they wanted to know just like that? It was kind of like that. We were sitting in the hot springs there, and beautiful, 4 o'clock in the afternoon in May, and the sun's about to go down, and the river is flowing, and all of a sudden I am just filled with this message. And And I turned to my husband, Mike, and I said, did you hear that? He says, yeah, we have to move. And I said, that's it. It's like, okay. That we knew immediately, right then and there, that that was what we had to do. We were now being open to the next point of learning, the next lesson for our lives. And then Pagosa was going to be the place for us. After that, everything came easily and effortlessly to facilitate that instruction. So after 12 years with my religious science church in Parker, 5 years as its senior minister, I submitted my resignation, 60 days notice. I was only obligated for 30, but, you know, I'm an overachiever, so. We put our house on the market on July 1. The home where we had lived for more than 20 years, the place where we had exchanged wedding vows in front of the fireplace and celebrated numerous anniversaries and holidays and celebrations, the home where our children had grown up, the one we were constantly renovating. So we were almost ready to sell it anyway. Within 5 days of the house going on the market, we had 2 attractive offers, and we set a closing date for 30 days at the end of July. It was a good time to sell, too. My husband was now working from home in his business, and as I transitioned out of my church leadership role, I started to consider the possibilities of what life could be like in the mountains. An experience my husband had often talked about through our years of being in Castle Rock. Always wanted to live in the mountains. The future was truly a blank slate for us. 4 days before we moved to Pagosa Springs and a rental house, kind of a transition house, in August, my beautiful little Schnauzer dog Zelda decided to make her sudden transition over to the Rainbow Bridge. It was more devastating a loss for me, still is, than all the others that were going on. You know, I'm leaving my church, my home is going away, but my dog died. You know? But as we know, life goes on. The wheels were already in motion. She did come with me, but in a different form. The moving truck showed up, the men loaded up our belongings, and we drove to the mountains. After we moved all the stuff into the garage of the rental property, and we had several discussions about what's going to be our next step, because we hadn't planned that far in advance. We were kind of open to what Spirit was going to give us. We'd made a list of things that we wanted in a home, and the rental house was fulfilling that for the time being. But we decided that rather than build something, we were going to buy something there. We found the perfect cottage and property location. We had mountain views, lake views. You know, it was a nice little quiet property. The exact features that we had on our list, and we closed at the end of September. And by late November, after cleaning and unpacking and painting and repairing those things that we wanted to do initially, we were all moved in and celebrated Thanksgiving with new friends. During that whole period, there was as much going on inside of me as there was on the outside. What with all the letting go and grief that I was feeling during these life-altering changes. I knew it was vital to my mental and spiritual well-being to set one positive intention in front of the other, replacing the old and releasing the old and replacing it with something new, and to keep healing from the inside out. I was feeling such sadness and a sense of loss for what I thought I was leaving behind, my church, my home, my dog, that sometimes it was just overwhelming as to what can I possibly do next. I remembered the life I had, the roles I filled and created, what worked, what didn't, what I could keep and what I could release. I focused on one day at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time. And I know it's always better for me when I stay in the now moment. During doing breathing exercises and meditations and bringing myself to a place of gratitude for the here and now. Are any of you Eckhart Tolle fans? He says in his book, The Power of Now, nothing ever happened in the past. It happened in the now. Nothing will ever happen in the future. It will happen in the now. So during the settling in period in Pagosa Springs, I found myself in a constant state of reflection, taking deep breaths, looking for balance, noticing bits of joy in everyday activities, and all of the while continuing to move forward, to set small intentions, to keep my eyes open, to keep them open wide to the possibilities that were going to come into my life, and to keep looking for the good, because I know there's always good in every situation. And it's fun to watch life unfold for the highest and best good, especially if you don't have any attachment to how it's unfolding. I had very little control during that period of time. I've come to appreciate life's journey of mystery in its unfoldment process and perfect timing. And to not only notice the now moments with my observer self, my God self, but to actually and fully engage in them and see what happens. One very important thing I've come to know is that while it's sometimes fun to reminisce about historical events or to acknowledge the pain and heartache of or how challenging or tough times can force us to grow, or about how we find courage and strength to get through some horrendous situations and overcome some difficult challenges, I can see clearly now that however much time it takes to forgive the pain and the hurts, physical or emotional, self-inflicted or caused by someone else, then that's how long it takes. Number two, whatever process it takes to forgive and release stuff or people, as quickly as we're able to, with love and compassion, then go through that process. You can't avoid it. And number three, whatever love and forgiveness it takes to understand and accept ourselves and what we're going through, and to demonstrate kindness and patience for ourselves as well as to others, then that's what we need to do. Because no matter how many books I read or how many pages I fill in my journal, it takes all of these steps for me. I must be a slow learner, but I really have to do a lot of self-work sometimes to get through some of these things. I also don't like to waste time, so I want it now. To move through the challenges, hopefully with grace and love and as much peace as I'm willing to accept, then that's what it takes so I can move forward. Growth and change are a constant and eternal evolution. It never stops. We might as well enjoy the process and engage in it rather than resisting it, ignoring it, or stuffing it somewhere like it doesn't matter, because it does matter. You matter. If we're ever going to move forward and manifest the dreams that we hold deep in our hearts, we must find a way to let go of the limiting beliefs that we hold on to in our minds, or that we've been taught by race consciousness or worn-out family stories. Take a look at whatever is holding you back. Remember, it can be difficult work, but it's so worth doing it. And then release it. Have a ceremony of some kind, or take yourself out to celebrate. One of the practices that helped keep me from being stuck in the pit of grief and misery at that time was to go back to the lessons and readings that I found uplifting and inspiring to raise my consciousness up. One of them, and a key teaching tool for me, is from Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science. For example, here's a passage that was a good reminder for me in those resistant mental moments. Limitation and poverty are not things, but are the results of restricted ways of thinking. We are surrounded by a subjective intelligence, law, which receives the impress of our thoughts and acts upon it. The law is a law of reflection, for life is a mirror, reflecting back to us as conditions the images of our thinking. Whatever one thinks tends to take form. and become a part of his experience. I know this with every fiber of my being. You can call it law of tendency, law of mental equivalence, karmic law. What you put out, you will get back in some way. So when I experience someone doing something to me, I don't have to worry about resentment or revenge or getting even or anything else, because I know karmic law is exacting and precise and shows up at exactly the right time with the perfect lesson for everybody involved. So what's my job? Stay peaceful. Let it go. And know that God is on my side, your side, everybody's side. It's going to reflect back whatever it is we put out. And I get to choose what I co-create with law, with spirit, with intelligence. I get to choose what I create in my life. And what I think about long enough, with feeling and belief and intention, will manifest in my life in some way. It has to. It's a universal law. That's how the creative process works. Law of tendency, sometimes is what it's called. What you tend to focus on long enough will eventually manifest into being. So for the first few weeks after we moved to Pagosa Springs, there were days when I was not a fun person to be around. Fortunately, my husband, he had to leave to go on a business trip for those first 2 weeks. Lucky him. I needed many readings like the one that I just shared with you. And I had to read them over and over again to keep myself in a place where I wanted my consciousness to remain. What you focus on, most often, is what you will attract and manifest in your life. And based on what I knew I was feeling, I didn't want those feelings to hang around for very long, and I certainly didn't want them coming back to me. I didn't want to recreate more of that in my life, any more than I had to, at least not consciously. My husband couldn't make it better, and he knew enough to let me go through this process on my own, in my own way. Being there for me when I asked him to, holding me, when I sobbed in the night. Sometimes he'd cry with me. We both miss Zelda. And also leaving me alone when I needed the solitude. I believe it allowed me to heal much faster because I was forced to be alone with myself, with my own thinking. No longer having a church to take care of, didn't know anybody really in the community, didn't have a lot of friends yet, and no neighbors were really close by at the time when we first got there. So it was a very solitude type period for me. Except for my ego mind, Maggie. She is there constantly. Being physically alone, I found that I came to rely on God, Spirit, divine intelligence, universal life energy, a lot more than I had consciously in the previous period. There were times when I had some really strong words in my conversations with God, yet I know the response that I got back was always love, just love. I started appreciating the time I had for myself, alone. I started doing things that I had put off for years. And I started taking care of me. And I've rather come to like it. The experiences around our move to Pagosa, including starting a New Thought church there, gave me positive and fresh techniques to use later when we moved to Grand Junction, just 20 months after we moved to Pagosa. Found out I couldn't live at that altitude with some of the breathing issues that I was having. So here we are. This is lower and higher at the same time. I could easily remember the sadness I went through moving from Castle Rock to Pagosa and not stay in it. So when we chose to come to Grand Junction, and I want to put down really strong roots here, I didn't have to repeat that experience. I could remember, okay, that's how it felt, don't have to go there. Let's move on, let it go. Before even fully settling into Grand Junction, I was able to start the release process, to let go of the Bacosa Church and the work there, and they're still thriving, so yay! And to recognize that we had also fulfilled a dream that had been in my husband's mind for a long time, of living in the mountains. We celebrated that accomplishment, and also recognized in that, I came to recognize, I don't want to be that hardy. I just don't want to do that. Roof rakes, I mean. I started to reinforce the practices that got me through the previous moves with spiritual readings, meditations, acts of service, and participation in a spiritual community. And finally, to re-engage fully with life by putting myself out there through service, speaking engagements, spiritual events, and teaching, by making friends, by staying connected daily with the divine. I have a stronger practice now than I ever did as a church minister previously. So I'm very grateful for this. Through it all, I'm also grateful for the many tools of spiritual practice that I have learned thus far. And I know there's so much more to learn. That's the exciting part. The learning never ends. We don't get to graduate life. We just change forms and keep moving through it. My greatest tools are prayer and meditation. Doing prayer treatment work, as it's called in religious science, science of mind, was and is the only way sometimes that would keep me from going a little bit crazy. I don't know what I would have done without the New Thought philosophy. I regularly ask for support from other ministers and practitioners to provide prayer treatments on my behalf. I've learned and accept and am grateful for the opportunity to turn over some of my mental control hanging on issues to someone else and say, oh, they've got it for me. Thank you very much. And then allowing it to just unfold. To relinquish to a higher power that human control, that thing that we think we need to do all the time. Meditation, just 5 minutes a day, anchors me in the divine flow and helps me to stay in gratitude of this amazing life experience. And in doing that, I can also recognize that I am never really alone. None of us are. Looking back, I can see clearly now that as uncomfortable as it was at times during the past few years, that those experiences were what I needed to get to where I am today. No matter how far back I go, I can see that that was the path that this soul needed to take. Some of which I guarantee you I will never repeat again. I learn my lesson and move on. And I get to discover the underlying strength of peace within my soul, to more fully trust spirit, to adapt to change, to witness the depth of love I have for my husband and our home and our 2 new dogs now that we have. I love my life. Say that with me. I love my life. One more time, louder. I love my life. Thank you. I'm making wonderful and deep friendships here. Such interesting people everywhere you go, if you're open to it. So willing to connect on a profound level sometimes. Life is an amazing journey to take, and so much more interesting with companions along the way. Why limit ourselves? Let go of the excuses and the resistance and stop wasting time in this precious life. Explore as much of it as you can or have an interest in doing. So right now, we're going to do what is referred to as the white stone ceremony. I ask the ushers to start distributing the stones and pencils. And before we begin, as they're doing that, I want to share with you a little bit about the stones. These hand-cut stones are from Hebron, Israel, from a quarry a few miles south of Bethlehem. These are the oldest known quarries in Israel, and many of the ancient structures are believed to be built using this type of stone. As you hold your white stone in your hand, know that you are starting with a clean slate. The white stone is an ancient ritual In Jesus' day, when someone served time in prison or in bondage of any kind, they were given a white stone when they were released. Each of us comes from some kind of bondage. And only when we are being given a white stone to signify the freedom, then you can let go of all that past nonsense of whatever has held you in your own prison. You are free to go and be and do and choose anything. Anything you can believe and conceive, you can achieve, be, or do. You can use the stone as a symbol to remind you of what creative energy and divine strength that is always present, that it's a source of inspiration. And the reason it's a source of inspiration is because in a moment we're going to go into that special meditation, a short one, where you will connect or step into your God presence and listen. You're invited to listen for a word or a name that best describes the true you that is unfolding, the truth of who you are, your divine nature. As in ancient times, a change of name signifies a change in consciousness. It is a very sacred and personal thing to be known only to you. By choosing a name, a word of inspiration, a particular wish or desire, and then writing that name or word on the stone, and you're not limited to one, by the way, it's a very powerful symbol of who you have become and who you are becoming, who you choose to be. In the Bible, St. Paul, Romans 12:2 said, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." That is what the White Stone Ceremony is all about. Transformation and renewal and setting focused intentions. It all begins in the mind. I ask that we honor the next few minutes as sacred time of silence and not to talk during the ceremony. This is a very personal and private time of release and also perhaps of healing for some of you. Allow whatever emotions that you're feeling to come forward. So as the music plays and blankets us with its healing sounds, listen to that still small voice and powerful guiding message from within. I'm going to prompt you with some questions and then we'll move into a short period of silence at the end of it. Listen to the word or name you are being guided to express in this new year, this next unfoldment of life. Connect to that life-giving force and divine intelligence. Close your eyes if it's comfortable. Take a couple of breaths to clear your mind. What limitations have been holding you back from being your expanded God self? What do you remember that is no longer serving you? Listen to your inner guidance. What needs to be released? This might be a behavior, a situation, addiction, illness, habit, places, people, etc. Only you know what needs to be released. This is a new year, a new day, a new now. All we have is this moment, no other guarantees. One now moment flowing into the next. Breathe in this moment. What new ideas, new thoughts, new actions will you use to reinforce your intentions? What are you willing to do to re-engage with the wonder of life around you, as you, through you? Feel the presence of God and know your oneness with divine intelligence, love, and law. Know your I amness. Feel that loving presence of Spirit as it surrounds and supports you. You are always loved and supported by the divine presence. And when you know what that expression of life is that wants to be revealed through you, when it speaks to you in the silence, write your word on the stone with the pencil you've been given. So as we bring this meditation to a close, bring your attention back to the room. Feel the energy of the persons around you. And when you're ready, open your beautiful, clear eyes. This special word, the one you've written on stone, is to be carried with you, to serve as your guidance throughout the year, and can be known only to you. It's your stone, your name, your word. There's no obligation to share it with anyone. This knowing, this reminder of your personal connection with God provides an inner peace that surpasses all human understanding. You can make the word on your stone even more permanent by using marker. And because I do this ceremony every year for myself, at least, I always put the year on one of the edges so I know what the theme was for that year too. As we bring this time together to a close, I invite you to keep looking for the big yeses of life. Even when something at first appears to be a little no, I've learned that no or failure simply means not in that direction. Find another path. That's really helped a lot. Keep moving forward into possibilities. Keep setting intentions. Keep doing your part. Step into action. And remember, universal law is a mirror, reflecting back to you what you put into it, what you set in motion. Your thoughts, your intentions, your words. What you send out into the world, the energy that you place into creative nature, will come back to you in some manner. Go within for guidance. Go into the silence for direction. And watch how Spirit, God, life keeps showing up and unfolding in all its glory through you, now and forever. For today's closing prayer, I selected a short piece from Chief Dan George. I don't know how many of you might remember him. He was an actor and author, and born of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation in British Columbia, Canada. This is his short blessing. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears. And above all, may silence make you strong. And together we declare, and so it is.